Ireland's Classic Hits Radio. How are you doing? It's Trina Mara and Brian Walsh has joined me in studio. Brian Walsh, who you'll hear on this radio station every single weekend. Talk there, Brian, so we all know who we're talking about.
Every single weekend from 2 to 6, and I'm a Galwegian myself, only on Ireland's Classic Hits Radio.
Good man, you don't need to plug your own show. That wasn't the idea here. We were talking in the office about spelling tests.
Yes.
And I was saying how my daughter had a spelling test in school, and you know, the day before she hadn't got one word right, and I just kept going over it and over and over it, and then she was at 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
The things we talk about in here, we just started talking about spelling.
Well, I was saying I used to do the same thing with my daughter, give her spot checks and check her at breakfast before she was going to school, saying, yeah, spell this, spell that. And then I just said to you, well, because I'm not that great at spelling myself.
And I was very surprised because you're obviously, this is the job that you do involves a lot of scripts and voiceover work and all that.
Reading.
And you discovered something.
I did. I discovered only about maybe 2 years ago I was diagnosed with dyslexia. Yeah.
How did you discover that, or how do you go as an adult to find that out?
You see, being honest, right, I always thought I was one of two things, either a bit lazy or maybe not the sharpest tool in the box. However, about 2 years ago, there was a friend of mine, we were doing something on a website, and he just said to me, he said, look, listen, just throw your eye over that for a minute, he said, in case I've made any mistakes, spelling, grammatical, because he said, I think I'm mildly dyslexic. And I thought, it was like a light bulb moment.
Yeah, penny dropped.
I just thought, you know what, maybe I am too. So I've been in college the last few years, and I decided then to go and get tested. Get diagnosed. So I went to the test, do all the bits and pieces, and they came back and said, guess what? You've got dyslexia.
So where do you get this test done? How do you go about it?
It's Dyslexia Ireland. I think it's dyslexia.ie. You can search them up if anybody's, a little bit curious. Now, there is a bit of a wait. You have to pay some money, but there's a bit of I was waiting probably, I'd say, a year to get tested. But then once it happens, and for going to college in particular, there are lots of supports. And even my wife said, when I told her, she said, it makes a lot of sense. Because, for example, she was like citing examples of if we're out at a restaurant, she would normally skim through the menu and go, yeah, I think you'd like this or I think you'd like that. And I would say, where is that? To be honest, it's like it was all a bit of a clutter on the menu. And I just couldn't decipher it.
Wow.
What? I know, incredible.
That's incredible. And when you were in school, do you think that you struggled a bit?
Yeah, there was one thing for sure. And I suppose what I never liked doing was reading.
The man who makes a living as a voiceover artist.
I know.
That's hilarious.
It's unbelievable. But
reading
I never
ads every day.
Yeah, and I never read books or anything like that in school. And I was just thinking, I think anybody that's just a bookworm or into reading books, I think it's an absolute gift. It's great because you can sit down, you can read about whatever you need. I always avoided reading as a kid. But there are apps you can get that you can throw in if you have a PDF or a different format of the book. You can throw it into the app and it reads it for you. And then I would read along with the text. Right. I mean, obviously I can read, but just sometimes it gets quite cluttered.
It looks like cluttered on the page for you. Okay, interesting. So I'd say there's so many people listening now, adults, who possibly have dyslexia and they just don't know. Yeah,
well, I did. I mean, it was only in the last 2 years, but it just made a lot of sense. Then I kind of thought, yes, I mean, the different coping mechanisms. Like if I have to go to a studio and record and read a script, I would ask to try and get the script in advance.
So you could have a look.
So I can have a quick skim through, and if there's anything difficult or anything I'm not sure of, then I have, rather than being in there trying to read the script and going, sorry, how do you pronounce this word? Now it has happened. You just come up and say, how do you pronounce this word? It's like coming up with a coping mechanism just to not look.
Would that be a word that would be an average word that people would generally know?
It could be.
It could be, yeah.
It could well be.
And what's the reaction that you had gotten in the past then?
Absolutely fine. Did you say, this? I'd say, well, I'm from Galway, so how do you say it up here?
So that's how you kind of masked it.
It's like coping mechanisms. But still today, I could be reading normal stuff and it's like my brain just glitches. And I just don't know what the word is.
Wow. So now that you know, it's like you've been freed almost.
Completely. Because it's like there's a freedom in myself then saying, actually, this is okay. And I do have a sense that I'm not as bad as I used to be. Because I think, well, actually, I have this. So now I'll attempt to sound out the word. And sometimes I think, like looking at the word visually, I'd have no idea what it is. But when I sound it out, I think, yeah, I do know that word.
God, when you think like when we were in school, like there was no help for anything like that. If you're an adult and you can relate to what Brian just said there, it might be well worth getting the test done to find out if you do have dyslexia. Brian, go on, plug your show again. When are you back on?
I'm on every weekend, Saturdays and Sundays, 2 to 6 p.m. I'm a Galwegian myself, only on Ireland's Classic Hits Radio.
Go on. Thanks so much. It's Ireland's Classic Hits Radio.